Mike Breen joins us every week, CEO of Human Rights First. Great to have you back on Against All Enemies. Mike, how's it going?
It's going good, Ken. It's going good. Congratulations on the show. It's good to be back.
Thanks. It's doing well. I don't know if that's a good sign or not. The more we have to talk about extremism in America, the more alarmed I guess we should be. But I want your take on what's happening on the southern border. You have the governor of Texas with this, I don't even know what to call it. He's putting a floating barrier in the Rio Grande, covering it in barbed wire. Kids are literally drowning. It is not stopping that many migrants. It just seems like a performance for his extremist base. And you've had people down there, right?
Yeah, we've pretty consistently had research teams down there, right there on the border where you're seeing those images, talking to people, and we've got a team in DC looking into this too. I think you're right. I mean, this is really sick political theater, is what it is, and it's done for an extremist audience. Set aside the really troubling federal and state conflict that's been set up here. We know Customs and Border Patrol has kind of privately reached out to the Texas government. Congress is now aware of that, essentially saying, look, this is making our jobs harder. You're making border enforcement more difficult for us with these crazy stunts. We know that it's had a huge impact. It appears on the morale of Texas state troopers and law enforcement who are being asked by their governor to do, really unconscionable things. And of course, the human rights perspective. We've had everybody's seen this. We've had pregnant women miscarrying, stuck in razor wire. We've had reliable reports of state troopers being told to push children, including infants, back into the river, including people who can't swim. We've had reports of troopers being told to deny water to people who are at risk of death from heat exhaustion and dehydration. So this is terrible stuff. And the rhetoric being used to justify it, it comes directly from white supremacist conspiracy theories that portray asylum seekers and migrants as an existential threat to white Americans. I mean, this is classic Great Replacement conspiracy theory. Some secret cabal of malevolent elites, usually depicted as Jewish people. Their secret goal is to disempower and eliminate white people by replacing them through non-white immigration or intermarriage. This is the theory, right? We've heard it from Tucker Carlson, and now we're hearing it from the governor of Texas, who's using it to justify these really brutal, ineffective, and illegal policies.
If they're ineffective, and we know they're ineffective, then certainly the authorities in the state of Texas know they're ineffective. Can you just restate again why they're still doing it?
It's sick political theater, Ken. I mean, this is about putting on a show for the television cameras and putting on a show for the extremists they hope will cheer them on. I mean, I, I wish there were a better logic to it than that, but that's it. And again, the rhetoric they're using, invasion, replacement. I mean, these are dehumanizing terms, and they're designed to justify policies that kill people and that kind of obviously risk killing people. And they're designed to play to a certain audience that's already steeped in this great replacement conspiracy theory, and its origins are white supremacist extremism.
We're hearing anecdotally about some state troopers, maybe even Customs and Border Patrol, but I think they're mostly state authorities resisting. Not in an organized way, but at least in their comments to media outlets saying this is too much. I can't throw one more kid back into the Rio Grande. Did your researchers come across any of that moral reaction on the front lines?
Yeah, we privately hear this stuff all the time, and it's kind of heartbreaking for me personally. I mean, my father was a state trooper, for 20 years when I was growing up, I looked up to him, and I still do, and greatly respect, why he wore that uniform. A lot of other people in my family are in law enforcement. I'm trying to imagine what it'd be like to have my dad come home and say to us at the kitchen table, well, today the governor, in this case New Hampshire, ordered me to throw a bunch of kids in a river. I mean, first of all, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have done it, and second of all, I mean, that's a heck of a thing to have to carry around as somebody who signed up to do the right thing. So I don't want to. I mean, the greatest cost is paid, by the people whose lives are being directly attacked. right? People's human rights are being violated. But one of the things I think we miss in these discussions is just how destructive it is for the law enforcement and security institutions that are ordered to do these kinds of things. It's moral injury, and it's a I can't think of a better way to demoralize and tear apart your own state police force.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up moral injury, and I think you and I have some authority to speak on this. Can you give us the primer on what that does to a person and the distinction with PTSD?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we all have some sense at this point of what PTSD is about. It can go hand in hand with moral injury, but moral injury is what happens to a person's sense of themselves and their society when they're ordered to do something that they know is wrong, and that they know will carry, if they do it, they're going to carry the shame of having done it, for the rest of their lives. In military service, which you and I have both experienced, this is a real danger. I remember, it was a pretty bad day in Afghanistan where I had authority over an artillery unit, and an officer far senior to me ordered me to fire unobserved artillery on a cache of food that one of his patrols had left behind. So basically a bunch of food and water left up on a mountainside, and nobody was looking at it, and it was above a village. And I said, "There's no way I'm doing that. I mean, there's probably a bunch of kids crawling around picking this water up. I can't do that. Not only does it violate the rules of engagement, violates my conscience and my basic understanding myself as an American soldier." And it turned into a pretty serious back and forth, but ultimately, we didn't fire that artillery. But I had the ability to sort of stand up and say no. Sometimes guys don't, and when they're in a position where they can't say no, this is a thing that can really destroy somebody for the rest of their lives, and it really shakes your faith in not just your command structure and your unit, but your whole country and the moral underpinning of why you chose to wear the uniform. So, it's a pretty terrible thing to do to somebody who's signed up to try to do the right thing and signed up to be a protector, to ask them to become a human rights violator. And we see this around the world.
This episode of Burn the Boats is brought to you by Manukora Honey. Now, when I say the word honey, you might be thinking about the stuff that comes in those plastic, bear-shaped bottles at the supermarket. This is nothing like that. Manukora makes Manuka honey, a super honey that comes from New Zealand, where the bees only feed on the nectar of the Manuka tea tree, making something that is rich, herbaceous, and complex with a creamier texture that is unlike anything you have ever tried before. You can use it just like the honey you're used to, but Manuka honey is super because it also contains unique antioxidants and prebiotics, as well as a natural antibacterial compound called MGO that only comes from the nectar of this tea tree. These nutrients support optimal immune and digestive health, so it's a win-win. You can continue to use honey in all of the ways you love, and you can enjoy all of the health benefits of MGO as well. Manukora sent me a jar and squeeze bottle of their 850 plus MGO Manuka honey, their best-selling product. The 850 plus honey has this creamy caramel texture that melts in your mouth and is unlike anything I have ever tried. I can grab a spoonful out of a jar to put in my favorite beverage or squeeze some honey out on some toast or oatmeal. It's so delicious. Each morning, I start my day with a spoonful of the Manuka honey, and it's the perfect amount of sweetness with the perfect consistency. If you head to manukora.com/boats and use code BOATS, you'll automatically get an extra free pack of 850 plus honey sticks with your order, a $15 value. Now, I love the jar and squeeze bottle, but the extra pack of compostable honey sticks is perfect for whenever you're on the go. You can bring them with you when you're traveling, need a quick snack running errands, and they are the perfect energy boost if you're out for a run or at the gym. That's manukora.com/boats, manukora.com/boats, or use code BOATS to get a free pack of compostable honey sticks with your order. You haven't tasted or seen honey like this before, so indulge and try some honey with superpowers from Manukora. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I am about to make a pitch for literally my favorite startup in the world. It's called Storied Hats, and it is revolutionizing the apparel industry, starting with hats. I wear them, my kids wear them, not only because they look great, but because Storied Hats is a great company. Every piece of this is sustainably sourced, and the hats are made in ethical fair trade facilities. This is an apparel company with a conscience. A little inside baseball here. I actually know the owner, and he's one of the best people I have ever met. You wouldn't think a hat company could change the world, but this one is trying to. Most apparel is incredibly toxic. It's not made well, and it's not made ethically. Storied Hats is different. And I am told by my kids, it's also very stylish. Tons of colors, patterns, hats designed for all seasons. And the best part, no logos. If you don't want your forehead looking like a billboard, Storied Hats has you covered. Check them out at storiedhats.com and use BOATS for 15% off at checkout. That's storiedhats.com and use code BOATS at checkout. Thanks. You mentioned Tucker Carlson and the great replacement theory. Human Rights First was out in front, and I'm just going to read one of your tweets, and monitoring the impact of violent rhetoric by mainstream personalities like Carlson, which created an echo chamber to and from the extremist fringe of misinformation and disinformation that can lead to violence we too often see today. I think the elevation of the great replacement theory is the best/worst example of that. Tucker's been gone for a couple of months. Has that vacuum been filled? Because that's always my concern, that it's less about the personality than the zeitgeist. There's just an appetite for that kind of hate.
There absolutely is, and there are more messengers, not fewer, espousing this kind of garbage. And sometimes you see it in the context of great electoral replacement theory. The idea that this is about the Democratic Party gaining power by bringing in all these voters who are going to vote Democrat. But we really shouldn't, I think, underestimate how lethal this is. August 3rd, Thursday, we're coming up on the 4th anniversary of the El Paso terrorist attack. And this is where somebody, this white supremacist who said, I'm driven by fear of a Hispanic invasion and replacement. So exactly what we're talking about here. Walked into an El Paso Walmart and killed 23 people because in his demented mind he thought he was protecting his country from an invasion from this replacement. Right? People act on this stuff and kill innocent people, and it's not harmless. We've known this for a really long time, and yet it becomes more and more mainstream for certain politicians. And now, of course, as we've said, this is the basic script for a piece of, potentially quite lethal political theater that the governor of Texas has decided that he wants to put on.
Speaking of political theater, I think Senator Tuberville is in the find out stage of his political theatrics. I'm sure you recall when challenged about white supremacists in the military, his response was, I don't see white supremacists, I see Americans, I see Trump voters. And one of his political theatrics was putting a hold on military promotions because of the military's abortion policy. And it looks like as of today, Alabama is no longer going to receive Space Command. Are you read up on that? Do you have any reaction to that?
My reaction is the same as yours. Mess around with national security and find out. I think he's starting to find out. It's funny, of course, but it's not harmless. There's nothing harmless about it, right? Encouraging extremism in the ranks and really messing up the lives of a lot of military families and senior officers, leaving the Marine Corps leader list for the first time in its history for stupid politics, and then trying to wrap yourself in the flag while you're doing it. But of course, the really shameless part is trying to score a bunch of military pork contracts while you're at it. Didn't work out too well for him.
Right. One last thing, while I have you, a bit of a non sequitur. The Biden administration has just agreed to a shift in policy and will begin providing information to the International Criminal Court, prompted, of course, by Russia's aggression in Ukraine. You came back from Ukraine. Actually, one of the last times we spoke, you were there for many administrations. Actually, since the creation of the ICC, every administration has resisted cooperating. That appears to be shifting your reaction to that.
Long overdue and extremely positive. We're not all the way, but this is something Human Rights First has really advocated for pretty forcefully. Our extremely effective but quiet director of human rights accountability, Adam Keith, has been a huge leader on this, really pushed hard for this change. General Hodges, a former commander of U.S. Army Europe, who's very close to our organization, was a major leader on this, along with a lot of his colleagues. So we've been publicly and privately pushing for this for a long time. I think this is a very important step forward. It's a crucial national security tool for the United States. It's an important human rights tool for the United States, and I'm glad to see it. We hope that it's followed up by just an official embrace around the world of the ICC by the U.S. government. But a huge step forward and a lot of hard work by a lot of people went into getting this done.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, Mike, for joining us. We'll see you next
See you
week.
next week. Thanks.